My guest today is Kasey Koski. She's a local artist who attributes her success in the arts to her parents' encouragement of creativity, both in play and education. We talk about outside of the box ways to earn a living in the arts, as well as ideas for volunteering. Kasey's upcoming project happens to come in a box. It's a deck of cards called Wenatchee Valley Explorer, made for locals and tourists with ideas for how to spend a day in the Wenatchee Valley. We'll talk about that and more on today's show. Thank you for being here, Kasey. I appreciate getting to know you better and making sure our audience knows what you have going on here, including a very cool product that we'll talk about toward the end of the show. But thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Lisa.
So let's talk about your career. Let's talk about how you and I talked off air about you were a very creative child. You were encouraged to be creative in your education and as a child and things that you did, child play. And what did that look like for you? What was your childhood like? I know you didn't grow up in Wenatchee, you grew up in the Upper Peninsula in Michigan, but what was that childhood like and how it has served you well now in your adulthood and your creativity?
Well, I would say that my childhood was pretty free range. I grew up very rural and was given a lot of free time to explore, to be outside, to build, to make things. I had creative parents and they always encouraged. I had some wonderful mentors along the way that kind of challenged and encouraged me to, continue to be involved in the arts throughout. A lot of kids do kind of face maybe some misconceptions or some adversity when choosing an art path. Mm-hmm. And so it was really through the encouragement of the people around me and kind of the acceptance that I was going to be on a creative path no matter what happens.
You say your parents were creative. What is that? What was that like? What do you mean by your parents were creative?
Well, my father was a retail business owner and it took a lot of his time and energy, but he really kind of built it up from scratch. Both of my parents had some at least remotely creative hobbies, and they really gave me a lot of time to explore on my own and encouraged my involvement in local arts and music lessons. Just a variety of experiences that helped kind of solidify that creativity in me.
One thing that I always feel concerned about kids today, and I'm not one of those people who thinks, this generation is so lost and it's all a horrible thing. I don't. I think that I'm surrounded by young people who fascinate and intrigue me and I think are doing a splendid job. What I think is less splendid lately is the devices and how young kids are put in front of them. And it kind of, I think it gets in the way of kids getting bored. And I think about, say, for my son, for example, he was a big Lego kid, and I don't know who he would have been without Legos. But if he never had the chance to get bored, what would he have discovered Legos? So I think about that and boredom and how important it is to, I picture you as a kid being allowed to go play outside and build things with sticks and collect rocks and the things that we do as kids, that it's kind of lost. Even just the playing outside. I don't see nearly as many kids playing outside in my neighborhood as I did when my son was a kid and all his friends were outside playing. So what about that? And what are some ideas that we can give to parents about the creativity and finding a way to, when we let our kids get bored, they get to discover themselves in ways that they wouldn't if they're just constantly stimulated by just any old thing.
Well, I wholeheartedly agree. This is a huge part of my childhood, having grown up before, smartphones and really kind of only having limited access to that early video game world. There was a lot of boredom, but boredom is an essential part. And I don't like boredom as really the term, but it's an essential part of the creative process.
Knowing what to do with your free time, learning how to use your free time.
Yeah, to have the time and the space to let your mind roam and to be stimulated by things outside of yourself, like the sticks and the rocks and the birds and, it could be so many things. It could be anything, but to just have something that's outside of yourself that's not that, endorphin delivering device that's got us continually watching other things and keeping our mind from being able to wander.
my parents would just throw together a scavenger hunt and for us in the neighborhood, and they could count on that. We'd be outside playing for hours on that. We weren't forced to go play outside. I know parents say it these days, and but the interesting part about it is the complaint we have about kids and them not being active or whatever. But I don't know. In my house, I paid the bills. So if I had a device that I paid for, I could take it away, And so there's a lot of, parental responsibility that goes into this and making sure that we give our kids those opportunities. And I think scavenger hunts are a good way for kids to go find stuff. And I think it's hopefully one of the safer ways to do it. Hopefully, if you live in a safe place where your kids can wander the neighborhood and find their friends and find the things that are on the list. But there's all kinds of ways that we can do it. And I'm not trying to be on a soapbox today, but I definitely feel like talking with someone like you whose whole life and career was built on making good use of your free time and being stimulated in that. And if you think about who you'd be without that, who are we raising up our kids to be if we aren't giving them that opportunity? Okay, enough about that. Let's talk then about, let's take a break. When we come back, let's talk about how the education you chose and the path you chose led you to where you are now. And how, yes, you mentioned that sometimes kids think, it's pretty difficult to make a living in the arts, but there's all kinds of creative ways to earn a living near the arts or near whatever it is we want to achieve for ourselves. So let's take a break. Talking with Kasey. We'll be back in just a moment. We are back talking with Kasey Koski, local Wenatchee artist and person who works in the arts. Let's talk about your career and the educational choices you made coming up to kind of try to stay near the arts, not knowing exactly how you would earn a living doing that thing that you really wanted to do.
So, like I said early on, I knew that I was going to do something near the arts. I wanted to be an artist. And I've kind of exchanged that on occasion and throughout my career to consider supporting my arts community. I've done a lot of volunteer work, unpaid curation, sit on the city's arts commission, things like that were increasing and kind of uplifting the entire community of the arts here. But I'm also like consummate connoisseur of skills with my hands. So I've worked in a variety of different jobs, from American shoe shop and doing leather repair to spending time in the museum creating exhibits for the community. Sometimes you just need to take a step back and realign and ask yourself again, what is it that you want? And am I doing that for myself? As much as I get joy from, doing projects that are related to the arts community, sometimes you just got to step back. I saw an opportunity and I'm very much a yes person. And so, moving forward and trying to grab hold with both hands of the projects and the art that you want to make.
And one of the things too that I think is important to mention in this part of our conversation is that if we try to stay near the idea we had for ourselves in terms of what we wanted to do in a career, we're just talking about career specifically in this instance, then when you see an opportunity and that fork in the road, you're more likely to recognize it as exactly that, an opportunity. And I think sometimes too, we all have to make a living. So maybe we have a job that isn't necessarily in that field that we hope to be in, but starting by volunteering or starting by doing other kinds of projects or even assisting with other projects that have to do with something that we love. So for people who are watching and think, well, I can't make a living as an artist, there's a plethora of choices they can have that have to do with the arts that maybe it doesn't necessarily mean they make a living at it at first, especially as we're young people trying to, figure out what we want to do next.
Yeah, certainly one of the more direct courses that's available to people is, starting your own small business. It's a little bit daunting, but there's so many resources out there to help you along. In this community, there's some really great entrepreneurial programs. And I've had, multiple part-time jobs at the same time. I I've found, larger grants or things to support along the way for a short period of time to help me, work on an individual project. It doesn't always have to look like you think it does. Try and step back and see what other ways there are to help make ends meet or to continue pursuing your arts passion, maybe while you're doing something else. We have to make, make our time work, to make ends meet.
And what would be one of the greatest examples from your own career and path that is an example of doing exactly that?
Well, I took a little break to create my own website a year or so ago. And in doing that, I was actually able to get a grant from the state of Washington's Artist Trust. So, just a little bit of money to support me while I spent a couple of weeks really producing that, content and getting the website all set up. There's some great resources out there and a lot of websites geared towards artists that show, what kind of calls to art are available, what grants, what fellowships, what, all of these different artist opportunities are. And so getting yourself plugged into something like that so that you're at least maybe once a week scanning and cruising these sites to see what might apply, you'll find something. You'll find something that matches your interests just right.
And you were at the Wenatchee Valley Museum for quite some time, and you've recently left as recently as September. Tell me about that shift and what you're working on now.
I just kind of reached a point of a little bit of exhaustion and needed to realign what I was doing. And, I knew it was time. It just felt like time for a change of trajectory. And so in trying to refocus on my own personal art and what it was I wanted to do next, I was creating really small watercolors of just nice scenes. I've not always done just nice, pretty paintings. Sometimes they're a little more challenging. I like making people think a little bit. And so these little paintings evolved into a collection. I have 54 individual paintings of things to do in the local area. And so when I realized what was happening and how many I had, I kind of defined the goal and said, look, I'm going to make a deck of playing cards. Nobody in the area has done exactly that particular product. A lot of artists have prints or stickers and things like that. And I've done some of that as well. But the Wenatchee Valley Explorer deck just landed last week. I've got it out in a few local places, and I'll be selling it in person this upcoming weekend at the night market on the Avenue.
Well, let's take a break. I want to come back and show people exactly what's in the deck so they can get an idea of what you're talking about. Let's take a break and we'll come back in just a moment. We are back talking with Kasey Koski. You are the creator of the Wenatchee Valley Explorer. It's a card deck that we're going to go into more detail about. What an interesting creative idea. Let's talk first about how it came about. Let's back up a little bit and talk about how this work came about for you.
Well, the watercolors were something that I was kind of doing to just satisfy my desire to paint over the last winter. And when I realized that I had such a collection of these, I decided to turn it into the deck of cards. I'd seen another one in a different area of the country that also utilized individual artworks for their faces. And I thought, there's nothing like this in Wenatchee. And having worked in various retail locations and knowing people in the chamber and like museum gift shops and stuff, there's not a lot of unique artist-based products out there that are really kind of geared at that sort of tourist market, promoting the valley. There just wasn't anything else like it available. So I decided to go for it. It was a little bit scary to get everything ready, and 1,000 decks of cards is actually a surprisingly large pile of boxes.
Right. That's funny. So when you started out, how did you organize your thoughts in terms of how people would utilize the deck, and how would you make sure that they? I mean, you would think a deck of cards would be self-explanatory, but maybe some directions. So what are the directions that people can expect to get from this deck if they were to purchase it?
Well, it kind of organized itself pretty naturally. There's 4 suits, 4 seasons in Wenatchee, and some things that are definitely only experienced in a certain season. So some of the cards, of course, can kind of cross over and be done in any season. But I provided a little bit of instruction there and just said, you can pick at random or find your season and decide how many things you might fit into one day's worth of adventure. Of course, some of them require maybe a full day. Some of them are a little bit easier than that. But I've also just suggested, if you're looking for something to do, maybe pick 4, let somebody else pick 2 out of the 4 and eliminate another by, going back and forth. So I've got an extra card in there with just a little bit of instruction to get people started to be able to use it in that way. Of course, playing cards, poker, or whatever you choose is pretty self-explanatory. But I've also got another deck in there, just how to find me, where to find the decks of cards, and a little bit of the background to the illustrations. Some notes on if it requires money, if it requires some experience, if it requires, some additional information to help people along. I'm not sending
example of. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Is that I wouldn't send everyone up to Kolchak by them, on their first visit to the area. Yeah. Some people are ready for that. Others maybe not.
And what are some examples of things, like if in the process, if they were to decide what they were going to do and how you use the cards, what's an example of how that would go?
So some of the things that really just had to be included in there was, see Christmas lighting, check out Apple Blossom Festival, maybe 4th of July fireworks, some things that really just are kind of dependent on when and why you might have come to the Valley. Some people come specifically to see the Washington State Apple Blossom Festival every year. And some of them are a little bit more random, like find a mountain lake or, like don't disturb the locals is actually about, just keeping your distance from wildlife.
Right.
So some of them provide, a really specific time-based attraction. And others are, accessible all year round. The Leavenworth Coaster is included and Mission Ridge, and some things just had to be part of it.
Right. Well, the thing too about this kind of creativity and you having this idea for the cards, because you said there's nothing like it in our Valley, which is terrific because it's a great idea, right? When we come up with an idea that somebody else hasn't already done or improve upon an idea that we've seen before. When creating this, what I think about is, like you were talking about entrepreneurship, and that's one way to be artistic and to try to make a living or a side hustle, something like it. And these days you can design T-shirts and hats and have them shipped directly. I mean, back when I was creating my alphabet pillow business, and I mean, we were sewing them, shipping them. They were custom orders. I mean, it was exciting to get orders, but then we had to fulfill the orders. And nowadays you can have all this assistance in getting this creative work out there that you don't even have inventory in your house or in a warehouse. Somebody else is producing that for you if you come up with the creative logo or design or whatever sayings you're having on the hats, T-shirts, whatever it is, stickers, whatever, magnets, water bottle. I mean, I have my sticker right here from the Don't Wait Project on my water bottle. So all kinds of different ways. And to think even 10 years ago, maybe even 5, but for sure not 10 years ago, would you have even had any idea how to get a deck of cards made and in a costly way? There's just so many different things that can be made now and then sold and do it in such a creative way. Would you have ever thought that was possible, or was it even possible? Probably not.
I don't think it certainly wasn't as easy 10 years ago as it is today. I will say that the deck of cards was a little bit more research heavy. A deck of cards doesn't come from a typical print shop.
Mm-hmm.
The big card manufacturers in the U.S. are the ones that also have small press printing options where you can design your own, whether it's a promotional thing for your business or like mine that's like all 54 cards are unique and original. So they work with artists and, people in marketing and promotion for any size company. You can literally get one deck of cards printed. Granted, that single deck might cost you about $50.
Yeah, right.
That's why I had to order in volume. and my cards came from the bicycle printing company.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And how much, so when you're taking on something like this, I mean, there's some risk and reward, right? There's some risk to ordering the number of cards that you have to order in order to get the discount that you need to afford to sell them, right? We're talking wholesale here. So, that's what I think trips up a lot of people, because that very beginning investment in themselves, whatever that looks like, whether it's a deck of cards or t-shirts, hats, like I said, bumper stickers, whatever, that you want to get into. Did that almost deter you, or you're like, by then you're so far in, you're going to do it and get it done?
by that point, I think I was far enough in that I was going to do it regardless. It did hurt.
Yeah. Yeah.
There went a portion of my retirement savings, but hopefully it'll come back. And I understand that it's probably going to take a little longer than it did to spend it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think it was worth the investment.
Yeah.
I know that I'm learning a lot about wholesaling, and I'm just kind of figuring that stuff out, how to go out and pitch this product and get someone to say yes, that I will sell it for you, because I do not have the energy and capacity to do a craft fair every weekend.
Sure. Yeah.
Just wasn't going to be part of my business model.
Yeah. Well, and it's true. What is it? There's the quote, and I can't remember exactly who said it, but if you're afraid to fail, you'll never succeed. And being excited about no's because they get you closer to a yes. All of those things that we hear as entrepreneurs that are so completely true.
And being an artist definitely includes a few more of those rejection letters. You really get to put yourself out there, particularly when looking at larger projects on the community scale. If you're not ready to get a dozen rejection letters in the year, you're not going to get any projects in the year. Really need to thicken your skin and brace yourself for those rejections, because it's totally a part of it.
No greater lesson for me in understanding how important no's are to get a yes was when I was getting my first book published. I had an agent, and I had her mail me all the rejection letters. She hated doing it because she had to physically go to the mailbox to mail them. There was no email back then. And she said, I don't understand why you're torturing yourself. I said, there's going to be a yes in this file somewhere. And sure enough, one of the publishers that said no referred us to the publishing house that said yes. So once you can get past all of that, it's really smooth sailing. If you're okay with a no, the rest of it's smooth sailing. So, well, best of luck to you. Tell us again real quick, we just have 30 seconds, where you'll be this Saturday.
Night market on the Avenue. Really fun evening, 21 and over, and they'll have music, food, and lots of local art.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being here. It's again called Wenatchee Valley Explorer. Thanks for being here, Kasey. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.